It's time for another beer review. It's another beer from Beer52. This is Rowing Jack. It's from Ale Browar Brewery in Poland because it's the Poland box. Let's get ready to rock, shall we? Welcome back to Rocker's Beer Review. Today we're going to be reviewing this beer. This is called a Rowing Jack. It's an India Pale Ale. It's coming in at a percentage-wise, let's have a quick look at this, 6.2%. Yeah, that's about it. Have a quick read of the outside. Finally, a beer that will not go off on the way to India. Only extra portion of hops could protect that precious cargo against the moods of Neptune and the burning sun. Sailor try to resist. So this has got quite a lot of different hops in it actually. It's got Simcoe, Chinook, Citra, Cascade and Palisade. Now I've not already heard of Palisade. Obviously the other ones, Cascade, yep, Citra, Chinook, Simcoe, yeah, we've seen them before, but Palisade, not sure. This is made with a lot of Pacific, US Pacific type of hops. So let's stop talking and let's start drinking. Let's get this beer out of the bottle and into a glass. There's the beer cap. As you say, it says Hop Heads of Poland, and they're called Ale Browar. Don't really know that much about them. Let's get this beer into a glass. Okay, beer in a glass. There's a lot of bits in that really. I mean, you're looking at it, I think it's high carbonation, but there's actually quite a lot of stuff sort of floating around in there. Carbonation is moving pretty high up, and I think I can't tell if there's a few floaters or it's a glass. We've got a two-finger white fluffy head. It's pretty much an amber orangey sort of colour. It's got a slight haze to it, but it's not as hazy as anything else. That carbonation though, I don't know if you can pick that out very well from the camera. Let's see if I can shine a bit more light on it. Yeah, I mean it's moving really quickly. Let's get some aromas. Yeah, I mean, with all those hops in it, you expect it to be quite, hop forward, but it's I'm not picking up any sort of fruit. There's a bit of pininess, but the more aromas I can smell is more of a sort of maltiness and that sort of biscuity sort of aroma that you would associate with a lager or pilsner. Yeah, not getting huge amounts of stuff from it. Let's see what it tastes like. Cheers, everyone. Flavours are quite interesting. It's very lager-like, which is quite surprising. But there is this sort of fresh... It's almost like... If you'd given me this as a blind taste and you said, what is that? I would have said, oh, is that a lager and lime? Because that is what it tastes like. It's nice and refreshing. It's quite dry and there's a little bit of bitterness there. But there's quite a lot of sweetness, and the sweetness is coming from, as you say, for me, the biggest thing that it reminds me of is having a lager and lime. So not fresh lime, but like lime cordial, which gives that sort of beer a much more sweeter taste. But there is an underlying bitterness there as well. Let's have another taste. It's a strange one, this really. To me, it tastes like quite a strong lager pilsner, but then there's a little bit after you get over that sort of strong sort of maltiness, you get a sort of a sweet. For me, it's lime, maybe a little bit grapefruit. Yeah, a bit of sort of that zesty grapefruit and lime, but it's quite sort of that really sort of sharp, almost tart like fruits. But the lime element is a little bit sweet. It's quite pleasant. But it has that characteristic that's quite common in a lot of very sort of German continental lager, or mainly German lagers and pilsners. is that it has that sort of, it dries out the mouth really, really, you know, quite harshly, and then it just leaves a sort of bitterness that just sort of sits on the back of the throat and in the palate, and you sort of want to drink more to sort of almost relieve that sort of harshness, but obviously then it, you know, then the cycle continues. It's quite high in carbonation actually. It's very characteristics in terms of its body of a sort of, you know, a good quality lager. I mean, it's quite high levels of carbonation there that sort of zings that sort of lime and grapefruit flavours around there. But there is this earthy, piney sort of a real sort of piney bitterness there in the back end as well, which again, when you look at those sort of hops, and straight away I'd be thinking Chinook. That's always has that real strong pine character, and Chinook was one of those hops in it. Yeah, Chinook, Simcoe. Usually gives that sort of more of a grapefruity sort of backbone. Citra, you know, again, tropical flavours. I wouldn't say you get big tropical flavours. I'm certainly not getting pineapple. I'm not really getting that much. I'm not getting passion fruit. I'm getting a little bit of orange maybe in there, but for me, it's more those sort of citrus, grapefruit sort of flavours, and more towards the lime. It's quite pleasant, but it's quite different. But for me, there is that piney bitterness. I mean, we've had it in a couple of these beers this month. It's starting to be a characteristic of a craft beer in Poland. You sort of read it and you think, yep, I don't think there's going to be that much bitterness, but they've all got this sort of this bitterness in that pininess. And I think that I know there's a lot of people out there going, that's the sort of flavour they're looking for. And a lot of people will know that that's not really the flavour. I like low to zero bitterness. It does give it a little bit more character. It gives it a little bit more, but I'm quite surprised there's all those sort of hops sort of vying for their attention in the beer, and it's muddled a little bit because of that bitterness is quite harsh. So I think I've drank enough and I've talked enough about it. Let's get some scores. Okay, the scores are in for Rowing Jack IPA from the Ale Browar Brewery in Poland. This is an interesting one. There's a lot of hops in this. It comes in at 6.2%, so it's a reasonably sort of strong, but it's very much like a West Coast IPA. You know, again, I think the biggest thing that it reminds me of is something like the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. You know, it has those sort of characteristics. That piney bitterness is very, very obvious and quite big in terms of the flavours here. So first things first was aroma, and yeah, I mean, there's not much aroma to it. There is a little bit of lime in there, which carries on into the flavour, but you're getting more of that maltiness. It smells like a lager, a pilsner. You're not getting all that fruit. There's a lot of different hops in there, 5 different hops, but, you know, they're not bringing themselves together to get to the mix to give a real sort of strong aroma. So, a little disappointing. I'm giving it 10 out of 20 for aroma. Appearance, well, I mean, it looks nice. Look at that, it's got great lacing of the glass there. It's a nice sort of clear, quite, it's even now you can still see the carbonation moving up there. It's quite a fizzy sort of beer. It looks pretty good though, and I like, any beer that holds its head and gives that lacing, gets better marks in my book. So I'm giving it 8 out of 10. Flavour wise, as I said, the taste when you first drink it is like a lager with a little bit of citrus sort of undertones to it, but then there is that piney bitterness that sort of continues all the way through it, and it's starting to, the last few beers that we've had in this Beer52 box, the Poland beers, it's starting to become a characteristics. They seem to, whether it's just the Beer52 selection, but they seem to all have this sort of common piney bitterness. Is it sort of, you got a bit of grapefruit in there, citrus is quite big, but I'm not getting any sort of tropical sort of flavours in there. And the bitterness and dryness is a little bit harsh, I think. So I'm giving it a 31 for flavour. Again, I mean, I think there's a people that like that sort of piney bitterness would love that, because I think it's a nice, that element of the beer is pretty well done. So 31 for flavour. Value for money, 7 out of 10. It's the same story, I'm afraid, 7 out of 10 for Beer 52. And then my overall experience, well, I won't want to drink too many of these because it just leaves that bitter, dry coat. It's like that piney bitterness that sort of sits on the back of the throat, and you just want to drink something a bit more refreshing, a bit more flavours. Not flavoursome, not the word. No, it's refreshing is what you want. You want it to wash that away, really, and leave a sort of clean taste. But you wouldn't call this a clean taste. The very earthy, piney-like bitterness sits there in the back end. And so that makes me think I drink a couple of these and I'll be going, oh, I can't drink any more of that. I'd almost want to drink a soft drink or something just to cleanse the palate a little bit. It's a little bit too harsh for me. As I said, I know there's other people out there that probably would like that, but for me, it's just a little bit too bitter, a bit too harsh in that sort of pininess. So I'm giving it 11 out of 20 for overall. So that topped those scores up, and I'm a bit disappointed. This is the worst one so far of the month. It gets a 67 out of 70. It's a 67 out of 100, I'm afraid. Sorry. And it's it's a Bon Jovi beer. I mean, it's a high-level Bon Jovi beer. I think there'll be some people that will go, rocker, you're off your rocker again. This is a good, nice beer. So it looks nice. It's got that nice, piney, acute bitterness, I suppose. But for me, it doesn't rock my boat. It doesn't do it for me in that sort of flavour. So that's why it's, for me, it's only at that level where if you like that sort of piney West Coast, Pacific Coast, whatever you want to call it, sort of hot profile with a beer, then you probably like it. But for me, bit too harsh, bit too bitter. So until the next one, you know what you got to do. Keep on rocking.